All right, now let's welcome in the former Dallas Fed president, Jefferies senior advisor, Richard Fisher. It's good to have you back, and I think it's just perfect that you're following what Steve and I have just talked about. If you're the professor here, what grade would you give Chair Powell, given the enormity of what he had to deal with?
Well, I'm very fond of the chairman. I think he's done a good job. I'd give him an A. But I'd give him an A particularly for what Steve is going to talk about tomorrow, and that is handling the politics, the way he went on television on that Sunday night, how he has fended off the intrusion of the political authorities into the business of the Fed. And there are two historical precedents. Just to follow up on your comment, Scott, when Truman appointed McChesney Martin in 1951, he made him swear to God that he would cut rates. He did not. And Truman started attacking him. He used a Trumpism, which was that he was a traitor to the United States, et cetera, et cetera. And then when Lyndon Johnson was president, McChesney Martin was still the Fed chairman, the longest serving ever. And he took him to his ranch and physically beat him up. And then, of course, Martin gave in. My boys are dying in Vietnam, said the president, and Martin cut rates. Well, Martin confided to his friends he was going to his deathbed ashamed of himself, and he felt he started the great inflation. So this is the third chairman that has to deal with a very aggressive president. I think he's handled it well, and I think he should be honored as such. I'm
sure there are no doubt people watching who would say, how can you give him an A? You may think he did well, but how could you give him an A when he made the admitted transitory mistake, the continued mortgage bond buying, which was excessive, and then being late to start raising rates? Don't we need to take any points off of the scorecard there?
Okay. I think, Scott, it's a good point. I'd give him an A minus. Now, I think it's important to realize that it's not an easy job. And I think Steve just put on the scorecard pretty good scores. Second best or first best, depends on where they are. But we're going to also see what is going to happen going forward. And I think the important thing was to keep an even keel, conduct yourself with dignity. On that sense, I would give him an A or an A minus. The transitory inflation thing, I remember telling Chairman Powell, I'm transitory, you're transitory. I expect to live another 20 years. I don't buy that argument. So that's one mistake. That's the big mistake he's known for. He regrets it, and he's corrected for it.
Yeah. What do you make of him staying around? Does that do anything to impact his legacy? Should he just ride off into the sunset, content with what all he's done and achieved?
I have a different view of that than I think anybody else. He is giving cover to Kevin Warsh by staying by, because Kevin may be under enormous pressure to cut rates. There's no logic to doing so presently. You can't just quote the Dallas trim mean or the Cleveland trim mean. Remember, Arthur Burns reduced everything to two variables, and we know what he did. He set the pace for one of the greatest inflations of all time. So I think when I say he's providing cover for Kevin, Kevin's going to be under a lot of pressure from the committee not to move. There are some on the committee who actually would like to increase rates. I doubt they will move in these first couple of meetings. And you know who will get the blame for it from the President of the United States? It'll be because Powell is resisting. And I think it's pretty noble of him to take that heat, and I think he will be, the heat will be turned on him. Yeah. But I think he protects Warsh in that fashion. Warsh has to think about what his legacy is going to be 20 years from now. He's only 55. He's a young man. He'll be next to McChesney Martin or equal to Martin, the longest serving Fed chairman in history. So I think that is a good thing, not a bad thing, and I think it's a noble thing to do. And if I were him, I'd do the same, but I'm not sure I'd have the guts to do it just like he does.